This is a short video on the cell cycle and mitosis and interphase. And our first slide displays some cells that are going through mitosis. And mitosis is just a means of growth and repair for organisms, for somatic cells. Here's a diagram that depicts the two main phases of the cell cycle. They are interphase and mitosis. Mitosis is the phase of a cell cycle, life cycle, where they are dividing. They're going through prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. A healthy cell is only going to spend about 10% of its life cycle in this phase. Interphase is where cells spend almost 90% of their life cycle in. They're growing. And interphase is divided into three different phases. And A, depicted here, that would be growth 1 phase. So growth 1 phase, that's where organelles are forming and important proteins are being made. Certainly lots of enzymes that are needed for the next phase, which is S phase or synthesis phase. In synthesis phase, DNA is being replicated, it's being copied. And then once DNA is copied and they've gone through a certain checkpoint, the cell is going to go on to growth 2. And growth 2 is a shorter phase of interphase, but this growth 2 is where cells are preparing for prophase. They're preparing for the first phase of mitosis. Now, some cells do not go to S phase or G2. There are some cells that go from mitosis to growth 1 and then to G0 or growth 0. And this is where the cell just it quits dividing. It may be a temporary period where the cell stays, or it may just be a type of cell that just stays in this stage permanently. For example, nerve cells, neurons, muscle cells, eye cells. Cells in G0 reach an end stage of development. They'll no longer divide. And so that's why we have stem cell research, because there are certain cells that you can damage and they will no longer divide after a certain period of development. That is certainly the fate of some cells in our body. Now, mitosis is the division that's going to result in 2 identical daughter cells. Well, what are daughter cells? Daughter cells are those cells that have a full set of chromosomes. They're not sperm or egg cells. These cells with a full set of chromosomes, they're called somatic cells, but they're also called diploid cells. And here's a graphic that shows just some examples of what somatic cells are, or diploid cells are, or daughter cells are. You have muscle cells, blood cells, cells that make up your liver and your gut, brain cells, skin cells. All of these are cells that result from mitosis. These are somatic cells or diploid cells. So before we look at the actual division of the cell, I wanted to show you an orientation of chromosomes and DNA and the nucleus and the gene and how they're all related. If you look at this diagram, the DNA here, deoxyribonucleic acid, you see the sides, the phosphate and sugar sides, and the nitrogen bases. They are in a nice long strand. Here it's showing what a gene is. It's a little section of DNA. But DNA is really long, and so I kind of liken it to a garden hose. You know, if you had your garden hose spread out on your lawn, it's all over the place. But DNA, just like a garden hose, it gets coiled up. It's coiled up around these little proteins called histones, and that coil is neatly packed into a chromosome. And humans have 46 chromosomes. We have 46 little packages of DNA that are inside the nucleus of our cells. And that's where the chromosomes are going to be. So thinking of that's the focus that we're going to have when we look at the next diagram. We're looking at what the chromosomes are doing during the cell cycle. Okay, technical difficulties. So here's the entire cell cycle. And I like this diagram because it shows you what the chromosomes are doing. It's very simple. Again, interphase, the cell is not dividing at all in interphase. It is, it's not part of mitosis. It's its own part of the cell cycle. So interphase, it's growing, DNA is being copied. Prophase is the first phase of mitosis, and you can still see there's a nuclear envelope that's still present. It's disappearing, okay? And then you have these centrioles with spindle fibers that are forming in prophase, okay? The only phases that you will see a nuclear membrane are going to be prophase in the beginning, and then towards the end in telophase. You can see that right here there's a nucleus forming, or two nuclei that are forming in telophase. But the next phase, metaphase, there's no nuclear membrane. It's completely gone, and those spindle fibers have formed. And I always say meta is the middle. Okay, meta means middle. The chromosomes are meeting up in the middle of the cell, metaphase. You have your spindle fibers that are attached to the chromosomes, and all of those chromosomes are meeting up in the middle. Okay, in anaphase, now this one doesn't show it as clearly as others, but in anaphase, the chromosomes are moving away. So away, anaphase. They're moving away from the center, and they're going towards those centrioles that are on the ends of the cell. You still have your spindle fibers, okay? But in anaphase, the chromosomes are moving away. And then in telophase, your spindle fibers are gone. Your chromosomes have moved to the centrioles, and you have a nuclear membrane that's forming. And then cytokinesis, this is where the cytoplasm has been split. So they're in two different cells. There's two different spaces. There's two different sets of cytoplasm. And cytokinesis is, again, it's towards the end. It's right before these cells go back to interphase. They have no organelles, and that's where interphase takes care of all of that.